Autopilot's on, and you got your heading selected. You're at 2100 RPM, and your straight level flight at
137 knots. True, but there's slight inaccuracies. Only at 39% power.
That's incredible. I mean, you're not going to be doing that with a 172.
Pull it forward because all the stones are here. Which is going to be repaved, fixed, but it's looking more like next year than this year.
Always delayed, aren't they?
Yeah, they're doing a lot of road work. So, everything's good.
All right, so we got Bill here, and you tell us a little bit about your airplane.
Okay, this airplane is a Cozy Mark IV. It's a plans-built airplane. They give you 2 books of plans, and I think there were 33 different drawings, and there's always been an issue of the drawings changing in size, but let's face it, we aren't perfect. It's a very capable airplane. It's the structure is fiberglass, mostly an E-glass. The let's see, there are a few parts that you can buy, like the plexiglass. Some people have made the canopy, but you get the plexiglass and then you follow the plans, and it's not easy, but it works.
What made you want to build a Cozy?
I was living in northern Ohio, and my family was in Wisconsin, and driving through Chicago was just inspiration to build an airplane.
It's understandable.
Now, it'd be a lot easier to buy an airplane at the time, but I was an air traffic controller, and quite a few buddies had plans, and I was reading those and getting excited about it, and I hadn't flown for quite a few years, especially after getting out of the Air Force. The advantage of the Canard design is that about 25% of the fatalities were maneuvering in the pattern when you don't have enough room to recover before you hit the ground. So they would get a little bit slow, they'd kick some rudder in, and they'd come around on final. I still do it myself probably, but in this airplane, the incidence angle on the Canard is higher than the incidence on the wing. I've got the vortex generators added a couple years ago, and they reduced the overall stall speed.
By how many knots would you say?
About 5 or 6 knots. And it doesn't really take anything off the top end either. So if the Canard stalls, then your nose will dip and it'll regain speed, unless you try to, if you just hold the stick back, and you could probably screw it up. But if the Canard stalls, it will drop, and the main wing will not stall.
So they're inherently safer than like a typical aircraft in the same configuration.
The disadvantages is that we don't have flaps, constant speed propellers are extra weight. They're in the back. The prop has to go through the shadow of the fuselage and the strakes, and that can bend the metal props.
And you have an O-360 on this that you've converted over to fuel injection?
Yes.
Okay.
It's an O-360. I followed the plans initially and used a Ellison throttle body injector.
Ellison
And,
throttle. And you're about 180 horse?
Yes, it's rated at 180 horsepower at 2,700 RPM, which I don't usually get at this elevation altitude.
What would you say your burn rate, your cruise would be?
At cruise, I burn about 7.3 gallons per hour.
7.3, okay.
And some people burn more, and they probably get a little bit more power out of it. For whatever reason, I go lean of peak, and it's something you can do with fuel injection.
And you started building this plane in 96?
96.
And when did it take its first flight?
First flight was in November 3rd of 2003.
Wow.
So
that's a labor of love right there.
Yeah. So the building, you're really excited, and that first flight is interesting.
What was that like?
It was, actually, as a controller and federal employee, I guess at 50 or 51, I could have, I could get a medical retirement. So I tested it when I was just over 49. So
wow.
it built
Right.
from like 42 to age 49. And you're a little bit sharper, but anyway, if I really screwed it up, I don't want to screw my whole family financially, but it's been a pretty safe airplane.
And fuel quantity wise, this has wing tanks.
Yeah, the tanks are in these strakes.
Okay.
And they're kind of interesting to build, but each side carries 25 gallons. I only put in what I need for that trip, and an extra 10 gallons. So that'd be plenty to get anywhere else.
And what kind of separates the Cozy from like a typical lawn easy is obviously this is a 4-passenger plane versus an inline 2-passenger.
It's essentially based on the Long Easy designed by Burt Rutan,
okay,
which is a 2-seat tandem. This is a 4-seat. Originally went from the designer Nat Puffer. His wife wanted to sit next to him. I think he had a very easy that he had built, and then his wife wanted a side-by-side. And so they just widened it. Well, the longerons, the fuselage comes to the back, and they used an O-320.
Okay.
And those are pretty fast airplanes. There's still really some good ones out there. And then he sold that design to a fella in Germany who adapted it and changed it and put a forward opening canopy. And then people were pushing Nat Puffer to design a four-place.
Okay.
Not that you really want 4 people in the airplane. It's like other airplanes. It's more of a 2+2.
Yeah.
I've had 4 a couple of times, and I've had 3 full-size, normal-size adults and some baggage in the back, and traveled north to south across the country. And that's worked out pretty well. But
and what's the farthest distance that you've flown in this plane personally, would you say?
on one trip?
Yeah.
Or I guess I've flown from northern Ohio to just south of Lake Erie, is at the Lorain County Airport, down to Fairhope. Yeah, it's about 4 hours and 15 minutes, but it's extremely variable.
Yeah, which is understandable.
Yeah.
And on the cockpit and the avionics,
It's whatever you put into it. If you, I've flown IFR in this, but it's really a little bit weak at this time. I only have one radio. I've got a Garmin 430 that no longer is really supported by Garmin. I do have ADS-B out, and I get ADS-B in through the Stratus 2S, and I read that on a ForeFlight on an iPad. You can put it on your phone, and that's a pretty good setup, really.
And is this relatively easy to work on with the cowl, cowling, to get the cowling off and to do basic maintenance versus like your typical Cessna 172?
Hard to compare to a 172. I know a lot of planes, everything's packed in there really tight.
Yeah.
And so at least building your own airplane, it's your own fault if you make it too full.
I like that.
This fuselage cover comes off, and then you've got all your instruments and everything is right there in front of you.
So that's relatively easy to access.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And it's got some safety features. If your throttle is forward, like you're going to take off, and your canopy, I've got a little micro switches. If that's not locked, which you could fake yourself out, but there's a micro switch there, and one on the throttle, and one on two of them actually on the nose gear.
Okay.
And so if you go full throttle forward and this isn't latched, then this alarm will set off. You can defeat it by pushing the defeat button there.
And on these, there's no flap systems.
No flap to give you a lower stall speed, so that's why I've got the vortex generators. It's got a belly board on the bottom, which increases your rate of descent, and that's electric. The plans are a manual, but I don't want anything really gonna bumping into the passenger, front passenger.
Yeah.
It's usually not a pilot. It's usually your wife, or I don't think you want your dog up here. But
Yeah.
so that was a Johnson bar type lever, which was a good thing. But I've actually had enough room to put in a
glove box,
glove compartment there, and this is a switch panel that Wayne Lanza Composite Design had built years ago, and it's got circuit breakers, and so you can see those in the front. I probably would have been better off with all bat switches, but I've got an engine monitor system from Grand Rapids Technology, and Trio Avionics wing leveler and autopilot connected to the Garmin, so I can track whatever flight plan I put in there, or I can just put it on course mode or intercept mode, and so it'll either intercept your track. You can offset. You can do a whole bunch of things with that. You just don't want to come into the pattern and forget that you have it connected.
which is understandable.
It's like,
Something's fighting you.
trying to fight me, yeah. The altitude hold, I've got a switch for on and off, and then these two controls here. And that works. The newer Pro Pilot that they came out with probably 10 years ago is all in one unit. But I went from a 6-pack for instruments to this. I've got this used. It's a Grand Rapids.
And characteristics of this, such as you're doing a cross country, you have to deal with a fairly good crosswind. How does this handle crosswinds?
I think it handles crosswinds really well. You get down to land. You fly it just like any other airplane. You correct into the wind. You can slip, especially if you practice it more. I've taken off in probably 28 knot direct crosswind.
Wow.
Alone.
Yeah.
Where you just get off the ground, then you correct. But landing, it always seems like you're waiting for the speed to bleed off when you come in, and then all of a sudden it's fine. You can reach your limits at times, and I have reached the very limit of won't go any farther.
Wow.
The rudders, both rudders go out. You would think it would give you more slowing power, but it doesn't.
And that's kind of like both rudder pedals push forward is kind of like a quote-unquote air brake per se, or what?
Yeah, it's I don't know. They're just set. They work separately.
And your initial rollout on takeoff, I mean, these obviously take off and land faster than...
I use 65 knots for my just alone.
Okay.
With ballast weight, and I use usually 70 knots for 2 passengers in the front. Although I probably adjust that down about 5 knots since I put the VGs on.
These have made a big difference.
A little bit, yeah.
And
if you don't want that little nose wheel, it's a 10 by 35 or 3.50 dash 4. And it's got to go pretty fast. So if you come in and that thing is, starting to spin up, it's a lot for it. So.
In your typical cruise speed, what do you usually shoot for?
I plan at 150 knots just for a round number, and I use 165 knots. I tell people.
Okay.
Now that's true airspeed. Fuel selector fullest tank. Both about the same. Master switch on. Panel on. Boost pump on. Mixture rich. Until a flow indication. And then back to lean. You can see the fuel flow right there.
Oh yeah.
On that page 1. So tack, oil temp, oil pressure will be right here. None yet. Ignition switches both on. 2 electronic ignitions. And ready to go. I don't see anybody. Props in the back, so you don't want to start it on anybody. You aren't going to see them. So clear prop. And it starts aligning. My mag compass here, which is rough, but works. And I'll say that searching for satellites. So, seatbelt, shoulder harnesses all good. Passengers briefed. Experimental aircraft. Got numbers here with weights and stuff. Probably a little bit off now, but passenger warning there. That's amateur built aircraft. Got the accessory power on, the radio master on. Turn on the audio, and then I turn on the gears down.
Okay.
Over center manual crank system.
That's the crank for the gear itself? Okay.
Takes about 10.5 to 11 cranks.
And like when you're taxiing this one, are you doing brake differential?
Yes.
To get it to turn? Being that
Just using left brake or right brake.
Okay.
And so if you have to taxi a long ways, you could heat it up pretty good. Since there's not much wind, I'll just point this direction. Okay. Canopy access door. And the fuel flow will, once in a while, will do this. Go to 0, and it catches up. So canopy access door is this one. That's
okay.
Closed and locked. Fuel caps visually in place. Run your tank, and they're both good. Controls. 3. Elevator. Ailerons. Rudders. We've checked them. With 2 of us in here, say we want to keep it fairly. It's up is up and down is down. Bigger manual system plans, I bigger with a phenolic
washer that I made for friction. Works for me. So that's a pretty, you have to get used to where you want to set. Circuit breakers are in. Lights are on, nav lights, strobe lights. Landing light is off, you don't need it. And pan lights. Light instruments are good. 3013 set. Showing about 58. That's pretty close. If you were technically correct, you'd want to set it to, or at least know what the difference was.
Control sensitivity on takeoff and landing, and even just in flight, it's very little input on your.
You might not even see it.
Wow.
And I got a cold hand here. Air blowing on it. So power back just a little bit more. Traffic it showed.
700 feet. Nobody in front of him.
Cool. Okay, so it just sits at 404. Oh, there's some bumps. Which you might get today.
Yep.
So I think what we'll do is go down to 6,500 feet with that. Out here with NOCO, you have to stay 5 miles away from them. Usually it's like one box. So we're Lena Peak, 1, 2, 3, 4 cylinders.
Okay.
The CHTs all come down right away. There's still some snow out there.
What would you say your burn rate right now would be about?
Well, it's showing, it's bouncing around quite a bit actually. Probably 53% power. That's probably pretty close, 4.5. Probably closer to 4. Okay. It's not much.
Your
of a
glide
fact.
range, if you were within that vicinity, theoretically, you could probably make it back to Longmont.
Where's Longmont's further south? I'd have to go higher and more power. Or...
Thank you.
Okay.
From continue upwind, there'll be.
You want to hold the stick for a minute?
I have control.
When you get them in sight, you can turn crosswind to follow.
I'm gonna put on some heat. On the right tank, we got 8 gallons on that. Okay, I got it again.
You have control.
Got it. So all the temperatures came down pretty far, Lena Peak, so we don't have as much power.
Right now, for.
So at this point, at any point actually, if I use the mixture control,
You're number 2, following the company archer over threshold.
it actually works as your throttle. So more gas,
On the ramp,
less Lena Peak, but fuel flow is really bouncing around there. Why?
Is there some pop delta, NOCO ground?
So you're using your mixture as
If you need more power at this point, or at any point, you can go with more fuel. You can see the devil's backbone up here.
I definitely like the side-by-side aspect of this. Yeah, I mean, you know, the Lonese is a wonderful plane in itself as a different animal, but having this side-by-side here, the field of view that you have, as a passenger in the Lonese, you're kind of in this little bubble, and then you have a wall right here. This, it's like...
And you could actually sit...
downward for only one. And
you could actually sit a little higher. The higher you are, the more you're going to see.
And your passengers even have a good field of view back there, you know, if they were, which is pretty neat.
Now those back windows in the canopy are actually ended up a little higher for the curve. This is a Horsetooth Reservoir right below us. No boats in the pier and the docks.
Oh, the water's a perfect temperature right now.
Okay, so the ball is centered even though I'm not even using rudder.
Why is that?
because there's really no adverse yaw, or very little.
That's amazing, because you do it in like a Cessna, you'd have to definitely...
Also, when you take off, there's no P factor, or very little, so you're not using this rudder correction to correct for it.
Wow.
Although the crosswind can force you to use more brake, which will slow your takeoff. Oh, I guess I must have climbed in the...
So right now we're doing 160 knots across the ground.
163, well, you can see we go up and down quite a bit. 167 knots ground speed with a little bit of tailwind.
7.4 gallons per hour. That's pretty efficient.
Yeah, we're going to hit these bumps again. Pretty low on the RPM here.
Right now the autopilot's on?
The wing leveler, or is essentially a wing leveler. And I can turn the altitude hold on. If it wants too much correction in one direction, it'll say trim down or trim up. Or it'll just say, I'm not.
On traffic.
So we're climbing now.
On left downwind for runway 11 for some touch and goes.
Autopilot's on, and you got your heading selected. You're at 2100 RPM, and your straight level flight at
137 knots. True, but there's slight inaccuracies. Only at 39% power.
That's incredible. I mean, you're not going to be doing that with the 172. I mean, I guess that's the appealing part about these is their glide is, and their efficiency in flight is pretty good, isn't it?
It is. It's very efficient. Okay, I'm going to punch the altitude hold off. I'm going to punch the servo off. I'm hand flying it.
Bravo, final.
Get into more bumps over here.
Yeah, there definitely is.
Any traffic around it?
So, I mean, if you theoretically had an engine out, what would your best choice of a landing area be with this aircraft, would you say?
Other than the runway, that's 4 miles away, I'd head for the runway. I've looked at that before, and it's kind of difficult because the landing speed, or the minimum speed, is like 60, 65 knots. So you're better off on a road, but you don't want to hit the wires.
And a field landing would be pretty rough in this, wouldn't it?
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're probably better off going for a highway like 287.
Yep.
Not too many wires across. Goes right through downtown there. At this point, I would throttle back a little bit. Aim for 90 knots along here, and I usually end up too fast.
On traffic, cruise X600 is on the 45, left downwind, left 45 to the left downwind, runway 11 long line.
What is the glide ratio on this?
I use 10 to 1, but it's really more. I'm on traffic, Cozy 9 Whiskey Kilo, turning a left base, full stop on 1. So you see 90 knots, downwind out there.
Nobody coming in?
If you have sun, you would be able to see your shadow. You're lined up. So you always look for one shadow, not two. Gear is down, 85 knots. Nobody on final.
Nobody on final.
You might be all the way out over Lions to be on final. Coming down, heading to lower altitude. Still 90, gear down, brakes coming down. Gear down, brake down. Traffic Cozy on final for 11 Longmont, and it'll be a full stop. Knots. Really want 85, 80. Gear down, brake down.
Traffic, cruise X600, left downwind, 11, touch and go, long line.
If we can go lower. See by these trees. 82. down, power's off, 79. Now you just look outside, eyes are outside, you're just holding it level. Hold the wheels off, the nose wheel off.
Traffic stationary, E182 Tango is 9 to the northeast, inbound for the 45 left downwind, 11, full stop, long left.
Rumbles a little bit.
That was a good landing.
Well, better than I've done recently. I said I don't practice bleed.
I see why you want a long runway comparatively to
You can do it, but you know what? Do it 99% of the time, and then you're in trouble. Okay, we'll go to the end. Traffic, cozy clearing runway at Alpha 1. I like to give them some sort of notice, or even if
what is the wingspan on this?
100, turning base, 1 knot. Left base, 11, long line.
Okay, here I would look around for traffic, make sure temps are good. Turn off my autopilot. Boost pumps off now. Taxi with the landing brake down. And this is where if you taxi at Oshkosh for 45 minutes, waiting for people, and that's when the oil temp heats up. So I don't have a label on this. I will whenever I sell it. Pull out is open.
Okay.
And the winter you probably never have that. Pull back in.